Now for the next spirit, or in this case, liqueur, I want to focus on in this series of videos. I wanted to kind of add in a little bit of fun early doors. So we've looked at rum in the first video in this series. I looked at vodka in the previous video. This time I'm turning my attention to Amaretto. Now, yes, gin, tequila, whiskey, brandy, all those will be coming in future videos, as well as other liqueurs and spirits too. But for now, I want to give you some Amaretto cocktails that I think you should feature on your menus in the next year. Now, you have to come back. If you don't know, if it's the first time you watch me, hello. My name's Steve the Barman. I don't like reinventing the wheel. I'm all about taking those contemporary classic cocktails and putting your own riffs and twists on them. So to help you stand out for your competition in your pubs and bars from the bar down the road, to help you make more money. Now, my reasoning, I do firmly believe that classic cocktails, familiar cocktails that people know and understand, that recognise on menu, I do firmly believe that they will outsell any cocktail that you make up with a name that no one recognises and you put on your menu. I've seen it time and time again. That's what I'm all about. That's what I believe in. So I take classic cocktails and I just show you little tweaks that you can make without going too far away from the original recipe. Now, I would also argue that you do need, when you are making names up for these cocktails, you do also need a nod to that original recipe so people know what it is, so they can understand, so they are familiar with it. So I don't believe in kind of putting your own spin on things and then calling it something completely different. The only way around that I see is if you have on your cocktail menus, if you have a name, say, I don't know, the first cocktail, for example, I'm going to sort of take on is the Amaretto Sour here. We're going to do like the cherry. We're going to do do like a Bakewell sour, but with a slight tweak in there as well. But if you didn't call it like the Amaretto Sour and you called it something completely different, I do firmly believe that you kind of need a little explanation on your cocktail menus, like one line, maybe a couple of words, just so people understand what this cocktail actually is, or what it where it kind of the influences come from. The other thing I do in this series of videos, I also look at prices. I show you how much they cost to make, because this is a big misunderstood thing, especially in a lot of work I do. I don't do much work in big cities. I do a lot of work in small towns, villages, local pubs and bars, independents, where they don't really have that cocktail experience. And this kind of gets lost quite a bit. So I do focus on prices to show you, actually, do you know what? The big money to be made in pubs and bars is actually with spirit and mixers, highballs, and really easy cocktails. You will see going through this video that actually you can make a hell of a lot more money quicker and easier than pouring pints or glasses of wine. Now, barman, why have you got 3 different types of Amaretto here? Well, there's no right or wrong here. You use whatever brand you want. I've just got 3 here because these are the 3 I've got in this bar at the moment. Just to give you, basically Amaretto, for those of you don't know, I think most people watching this video would know, you do treat it as an almond liqueur, although very rarely does it actually come from almonds. Take the Serrano, for instance, it actually comes from the apricot kernels, those nuts in, or pips, or whatever you want to call them, inside of an apricot. That's how that's distilled. Sometimes, and I don't know this, I'm just, this is just a bottle here, so this is not there, but sometimes almond liqueurs will be made from almond, or amarettos I should say, would be made from almond extracts. I think I've got some here actually, is that the one? Almond extract. You could just use some of that in add some sugar, take some sugar syrup, add some sort of alcohol to it, like NGS, vodka or anything, so you kind of got an alcoholic sugar syrup, and add a couple of drops of almond extract. And that is how some brands might make their almond liqueur, their Amaretto. I'm not saying Monin do. I don't think they do. I'm pretty sure they don't, but that's how some cheaper brands might go. And then you've got other brands. Now, this is the brand that I'm going to use in this video, because actually going back to 2003, 4, 5, 6, this was actually the brand I used in my bar. I really loved this stuff. I completely forgotten about it until very recently. Until when I tried it again at a bar show, I was like, oh my God, I really love this. This for me, because I like marzipan on my Christmas cakes, you know, that yellow stuff on the outside of Christmas cake, I absolutely adore this. This for me is the Amaretto that is as close to that marzipan flavour that I get. So I do love this stuff. but I totally understand that some people are going to prefer this. This is also the weaker one of the lot. This is 24% ABV. The other two are 28%. So you've got that little bit of difference there. But the way this is made by soaking those Amaretti biscuits. Do you know those Amaretti biscuits you get with coffee sometimes in some coffee shops? They soak the alcohol in those Amaretti biscuits, and that is how this is made. This is Lazzaroni. So I've already given it away. The three cocktails that I'm going to be kind of looking at in this video, we are going to be tackling the Amaretto Sour first up. That's coming up in a second. I am going to be looking at the Godfather and taking, you might be thinking, well, hang on a minute, the Godfather's only 2 ingredients. I'm going to give you some little riffs, easy riffs for that. And then I'm going to be looking at the Amaretto Mule. Amaretto, lime, ginger beer. There's a way we can take that. It is a phenomenal cocktail. It doesn't actually get rocked out as often as that should do, because that is a really, really great way to drink Amaretto. You know, Amaretto and Coke is probably most people's thought of highball, but Amaretto and ginger is stunning. But first off, let's look at the Amaretto Sour. Now, from all the cocktail books I've read and kind of speaking to US bartenders as well and YouTube and stuff like that, the general way the impression I get of the Amaretto Sour is in the UK, whenever I see it on cocktail menus, it is predominantly Amaretto is the base spirit. There is very rarely any, I'm going to call it a spirit in this. It's a liqueur, but I'm just going to refer to it as a spirit. You get what I'm talking about. But it is the base spirit of this. There is generally no other kind of spirits at play. However, when you look at the US, they do the split base. Jeffrey Morgenthaler, for instance, is very famous for like making the best ever Amaretto Sour. And he uses split base of whiskey. I think it's bourbon. Don't think it's rye, but it might be rye. But uses split base of whiskey to Amaretto. Now, again, you've got a couple of factors to play here, because that Lazzaroni is actually a lot sweeter than what that is. So you kind of have to dial it around. If I was doing it in an Amaretto Sour just with that, I would not use any sugar whatsoever in the cocktail. I do use a touch of sugar when I make Amaretto Sours with that. But bearing in mind, I'm going to do a split base here. I'm going to go for an Irish whiskey. And this has got slightly an oakier kind of vibe to it as well. You can see it's double oaked in here. Sherry cask and normal bourbon cask, I think this is. But this is the whistler. This is an Irish kind of whiskey. So I'm going to kind of do a split base of these two. Now, I'm not claiming to have invented this bit, but I haven't seen anyone do this. But I've fallen in love with this. I've done this numerous times now in the last few months. And I just flipping adore it. It just works so, so well. Now, many of you are not going to recognize this at all, but this is a local brand to me, literally 10 minutes down the road. This is their bitter. Now, you would look at this as Campari. Pretend you are looking at a bottle of Campari. Now, up until recently, a couple of months ago, I would have said, you know, I'm not a bitter connoisseur at all. I've tasted various different sort of red bitters, like Campari alternatives, but they're all pretty much the much. You know, they're all really the kind of same. They're all kind of got this like little bit. People don't really think of these as sweet. But when you taste this and then compare it to Campari, you will think, wow, Campari is quite sweet. This is phenomenal. So this is just a local, this is Vault, just down the road for me, their bitter alternative, and it is absolutely cracking. So I'm not saying go out and rush and buy this brand, please do. What I am saying is, you know, there are multiple different other versions of Campari out there, and just because you may not like Campari, even though from most pubs and bars, I'm going to assume you stock Campari, broaden your horizons a little bit and just try for one bottle. Just try something different, because they are made up of different herbs that goes in there. I would say spices, but herbs. And different herbs are going to create different tasting things, albeit they are going to be red. Hopefully you can kind of see that. That is a bright, vivid red liqueur. But the bitter element in this Amaretto Sour is phenomenal. Incredible. I've never seen it written on a cocktail menu before. It might have been. I don't know whether I've invented it, but flipping hell, I really, really love this. Now, the whole reason I love using split base and adding the Amaretto is because I do like, adding the bitter, is because I do like using like sugar syrups. And in this case, cherry. I've got Monu's cherry there. I think this is a great way of doing the cherry bakewell. You could use cherry brandy, but when you do this, I think sugar, just adding a touch of sugar, just works. So for this, my sugar is going to be the Monin Cherry. Standard couple of things for an Amaretto Sour. I've talked about these bottles, you know, Go and watch the other videos a lot. I'm going to stop talking about these bottles of lemon juice and lime juice. You know, we've given them enough coverage. It's what I use. It's 100%. Go and watch other videos. But standard lemon juice, Angostura bitters. And then the one product I haven't really spoken about at length is this stuff. Now, whenever I do foaming cocktails, 9 times out of 10, I am going to use the foamers. Various brands. Go and watch the vodka video where I talk about the sour in there. I do kind of, well, it's not sour, but I kind of add foam to one of the cocktails there. But when I do sours, I like to use products like this that will actually give me the texture of the cocktail, that silky smooth texture in the cocktail, like egg white would do. I would never use egg white these days. I just don't. I'll explain why in a second. If I'm doing stuff like I did in the previous video where I just want the white froth on top, that's where the foamers come in. But if I want the actual body of an egg white in a cocktail, I will use a product like this. And this is Ogg's Aquafaba. Aquafaba is just chickpea juice. Okay. Now, the whole reason I don't use egg white is because I do go out and do events. These days we encounter a lot of vegans. I also encounter a lot of pregnant hens at hen parties. Yes, hens they don't drink alcohol. We have mocktail equivalents. I have a non-alcoholic Amaretto, for example, that is absolutely phenomenal for Amaretto Sours. So I do like to use this when I'm doing events because it just mimics the egg white perfectly. So first up, let's do our whiskey. So I've got 25 ml of this Irish whiskey from Whistler, 25 ml of the Lazzaroni Amaretto, just 10 ml of your bitter or Campari alternative. You just want 10 ml of your cherry syrup from whatever brand you're using, 25 ml of lemon juice, couple of good dashes of Angostura bitters, and then this stuff, our Aquafaba, and you just want about 20 ml is my sweet spot. Now this in the UK, you could get litre packs in the Tetra packs in the trade, but this stuff you can pick up from quite most supermarkets now. 200 ml, they say the equivalent of 4 egg whites. My sweet spot is, as you've just seen, is 20 ml. It means you get 10 cocktails out of that. All right, so it's roughly about £2.50, £2.60 a bottle. So we'll talk about price afterwards, but you can see it's quite a cheap alternative. We're just going to do a very quick dry shake. I think you have to. You could. So I've got some maraschino cherries there. I might do for a photo for a video or for a thumbnail, but just a dehydrated orange or an orange. I think that's a fantastic garnish for the Amaretto Sour. We'll just balance that nicely on top of there. I'm using this word a lot at the moment, but that is incredible. Absolutely incredible. The Amaretto, I'm not saying the whiskey's there, but you've got this marzipan-y vibe with this kind of, I don't know, kind of oaky, kind of just sort of hit behind it. You get that ever so subtle hint of bitter, but that lengthens out into the cherry, and cherry and almonds just works so well together. The Angostura bitters come through in there. That for me is just, you know, the Amaretto Sour 3.0, the cherry bakewell sour 2.0, whatever you want to call it. It's just, I love, honestly love. I would probably never make an Amaretto Sour again without using probably this, to be fair, but like a bitter, like Campari or something, because you don't need much. Just that little bit just really brings it through. Now let's focus on price for 2 seconds. Got these all loaded down here. That is actually a more expensive whiskey than you would probably use in your bars. That's coming in at 72 pence a shot. You could probably go down a little bit. You probably bring that down to 50-ish p, give or take, but 72p for that. The Lazzaroni Amaretto, 70p. Your bitter, your Campari, 40p for that. The Monin Cherry, 11p for 10 ml. Your lemon juice, roughly about sort of 30p, 25, 30p. You'll get it cheaper if you've got business accounts. Angostura bitters, 10p. The garnish, I always kind of add like 25p onto that for that sort of stuff. And then you've got the Aquafaba, which, you know, depending, if you're going down that route and you get trade prices, you get that actually quite cheap, but about 20p. So give or take, roughly £2.70-ish. And I know, and I've gone over the top there. I think you can easily bring that down to under £2.50 for a cocktail. Under £2.50 for a really, really good Amaretto Sour, Bakewell Sour, Cherry Bakewell Sour, whatever you're going to call that. wow, honestly, reinvented that Campari, that bitter twist. Now, the second Amaretto cocktail I'm going to show you took me by surprise, actually. I wasn't expecting to enjoy it as much as I did. This is absolutely, I've got to find another new word. This is absolutely incredible, fantastic, out of this world. Love it. Now, the Godfather, for those of you who don't know, is really, really simple. Whiskey, Amaretto, but more often than not, Angostura bitters in there, some form of bitters. Okay, that's it. Kind of like old-fashioned territory. You know, your whiskey is there, your Amaretto replaces your sugar syrup, and you got your bitters. So the Godfather is technically kind of like an Amaretto old-fashioned, if you like. Now, as I've done whiskey in the first cocktail, I wanted to take this in a different direction. So what I've got, I'm going to go for an aged tequila, Cascabel Añejo. Now, this is why this surprised me. I don't think, and I can't remember a time, I don't think I've ever tasted an Añejo tequila before. I've had Reposado, so Reposado's young aged, Añejo slightly longer aged. Now, if you remember back, if you've watched me for a while and you remember back to my rum journey, I prefer unaged rums, if I'm being honest. The longer the rum is aged, the less I like it. I don't like those woody influences in rum. I like rum to taste of rum. Yeah. Very different with brandy and cognac. I like the longer aged stuff, but then you don't really have that whiskey influence that goes into brandy and cognac. But the Cascabel Añejo, when I first cracked a bottle, oh my God, it's really, really, really good. I could get properly used to drinking that neat. My first ever experience of I've had other brands, but I think they're all Reposado tequilas. I can't recall ever a time where I've ever had an Añejo tequila. So I'm very new, very wet behind the ears when I come to this sort of stuff. But this is incredible. This is absolutely outstanding. Really is. Delicious. So good. So easy to drink. It's like a mellowed, it's the only way I can describe it, like a mellow tequila. It's unmistakably tequila, but it's just lovely, mellow, sort of vanilla-y note to it. It's cracking. It's really, really good. So I would actually like to explore some like Añejo tequilas. I'm kind of intrigued by this now. But anyway, get back to that. So we've got that. We've obviously got that. Now, instead of the Angostura bitters, what works very, very well for me there is chocolate. I'm going to go chocolate bitters. Is that facing forward? There we go. Miss Betty's bitters, chocolate. There's various other. I've got still a bunch non-alcoholic chocolateware. We've got Angostura cacao bitters. These two with chocolate. Wow. Let's just dive in and make it. Now, I'm just going to put this out there for like, I don't mean lower end bar. I don't know what to call them, but for a mass market bar, not a top end cocktail bar. I don't think you need to invest in like a mixing glass or anything like that. I just think that's pony. Just use a cocktail tin, something like that. It just works. I still prefer to do this in a tin and then strain it into a fresh glass. But I mean, if you're at home, you were going to make this straight in a glass. Of course you are. But I do kind of like stirring it in there. Now, the ratios that I'm going for, and I've kind of found this, 30 ml of this Añejo tequila, 20 ml of this particular Amaretto, and 10 drops of these Miss Betty's chocolate bitters. Yeah, I am slowly getting there with my clear ice. Made myself, it's not perfect, but it's kind of getting there. And then just again, oh, the smells amazing. But just a dried, dehydrated orange with thrown to garnish. Don't mind me for a few minutes. Oh, I don't know what to say. Oh, it's the second one of these I've had now. And oh, wow. That tequila with the marzipan, with the Amaretto obviously, but the marzipan vibes and the chocolate bitters. I genuinely can't get enough of this. This would probably be, if I'm going to class it as an old fashioned, or I know it's a Godfather, riff on a Godfather, but if I'm going to call this an old-fashioned, a tequila old-fashioned, a tequila and amaretto old-fashioned, or whatever, this has to be the best one I've ever made. It has to be. And I love my rum old-fashions. I've made loads, pina colada rum old-fashions, you know, whether it's a pineapple rum and coconut syrup, and, you know, I've done loads and I love them all. This is just me all over it. It helps that I really, really love marzipan, and I kind of really, really love chocolate. But that just goes so well together. That tequila, the aged tequila. I've tried it with the Reposado. It's not quite the same. It's the aged tequila, that amaretto, and those chocolate bitters. This is outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. Let's talk about the prices of this before I get too carried away. So, yes, the tequila is a little bit more expensive, all right? But I've used 30ml. Okay, so 30ml of my trade price with Master of Malt comes out at £1.60. Remember, it's not a double measure. So you're not up into the £2.40s, £2.50s. It's a 30ml, just slightly more than 25ml, slightly more than a shot. All right, so £1.60. 56p for your amaretto because it's 20ml. All right, and then your bitters, I've kind of bracketed that as 15p. I dare say maybe slightly cheaper for you and your prices, but and then the garnish, the orange, the ice, whatever. I always do 25p, but that's over the top. I know it is. £2.56. £2.56. That is absolutely incredible for all the old-fashioned lovers, the rum fashion lovers out there. And tequila fashion, what, I don't know, tequila old fashioned? That bottle of Añejo Cascabel might get polished off like this. This is flipping good. While I finish up that Añejo tequila. Oh, really love it. Anyway, let's move on to the third cocktail. Now, this is as easy a riff as you'll ever get from me. All right, this is just simple. This is just swapping out one ingredient, but it's actually trying to put it on your radar. The Amaretto Mule, Disaronno Mule, if you're using Disaronno, you know, whatever you want to call it, I don't think gets as much love as it should do. And I don't think the Mule does, to be fair, whether you're doing like a dark and stormy, like a rum and ginger beer, whether you're doing the Moscow Mule, like rum, vodka and ginger beer. I don't think the Mule, the ginger beer, gets as much love. But this, for me, is the epitome of this cocktail. Amaretto. A touch of lime juice. I've got this. You're probably going to do a couple of wedges of lime in your bars. I get that, but I've got this. All right? Your ginger beer of choice. My favourite of... I've been working with, you know, I've been working with Franklin's and Sons. Don't think I mentioned it in this video, but if you drop down into the description, very first order, good time in, 15% off. Forgotten, it's in the description below. 15% off your first order, I think it is. So yeah, drop down in there. Franklin's and Sons, for me, is my favourite ginger beer. It's not properly feisty, which I kind of like. I don't really want an out-and-out feisty ginger beer that kills the flavour of anything else. I like ginger beer that's got this ever so slightly subtle hint of sweetness to it, which I prefer over Fever Tree ginger beer. This, for me, is the market leader at this precise moment for when mixing ginger beers. Absolutely great. I do prefer something different when I'm just drinking ginger beer on its own, but for mixing ginger beers, this just works an absolute treat. But the riff... I should have got these out. I think it's these ones. The riff. Angostura bitters would be your normal kind of go-to for this in a mule, a Moscow Mule, dark and stormy. It's there. Black pepper and cardamom. Cardamom goes exceptionally well with ginger. Black pepper goes exceptionally well with that amaretto. You might think it's a bit bizarre and it's a bit weird, but trust me, this really does work. Before I go any further, a big shout out to Anth from Ms. Betty's Bitters and John, JBE, that imports it here to the UK. Because when I was planning this, I was actually out and I was messaging out, what do you reckon to go with this? And he suggested do this. I got home and I tried it and I was like, yeah, spot on, pal, spot on. So big shout out to Ant. This is Ant's riff. Now, I was looking for different bitters. this works an absolute treat. So definitely no shaking involved in this one. And I have sort of got a clear spear of ice in here, but a 50ml double bubble of your Amaretto, dash of lime juice or a couple of wedges. I know it's slightly heavier than they recommend. I'm actually going for 15 drops of these bitters. They will recommend 10 drops. I think, depends for me, 10 drops in a daiquiri when there's not much else going on, I think works. But when I do longer drinks like this, I think you need about 15 drops. And if you do like where you've got lots of flavors going on, like bitter, like juices and stuff like that, I think you need even more to sort of come through there. But when there's not many flavors like this going on, I think 15 drops is this kind of sweet spot for these long cocktails. Top up with your favorite ginger beer. So when costing this out, I am going to factor in for a whole bottle of ginger beer, but I've probably used, you know, if you probably use slightly smaller glasses in your bars, so you probably use 2/3 of the bottle. You can wrap that over, but I'm going to cost this out for a whole bottle. But then to garnish, just got a dehydrated lime wheel there. So the first question I know you're asking, I would assume you're asking, is do you taste those bitters, the black pepper and the cardamom? Yes. Yes. It's like, in a weird way, it's like I've got the pepper grinder out, like cracked black pepper. That's the vibe I get off that. And I do use quite a bit of black pepper when I'm cooking, like the ground. I get that vibe. I can tell the cardamon's there because it just gives the ginger beer a slightly different flavour. And you could argue that comes from the Amaretto, but underneath that, I have got that marzipan vibe going through it. I really, really, really like that drink. For a mule, this is this thing. If you put a mule on a menu, I'm not 100% convinced it's going to sell if you just put a mule. It's one of those cocktails that people don't recognise and they're kind of, I don't know. So you might have to go down a different route of like an Amaretto Mule might sell. I think it's one of these drinks though that you kind of have to get people to taste. And once they taste it, they're like, wow, what is that? That is really, really good. This is one of those drinks. Get people to taste it first. They're going to buy a second, they're going to buy a third, they're going to buy a fourth. I would quite happily drink this all night. I would really happily drink that all night. It's not sweet because the ginger beer cuts that back. The lime juice cuts that back. The bitters cut that back. But it has got that quaffability to it. I think the biggest hurdle with this drink is getting it on a menu where people will kind of look at it and go, yes, I want that. I think that's the biggest hurdle. You get past that, you're going to make a ton of money with this. So then, now that I've done half of that drink, prices. Really, really simple, really easy, this one. The Amaretto, 50ml, £1.40. The lime juice, as I've just done a dash, I've said 11p. 11 to 15p, half a lime. Lime's about 30p. Might do a couple of wedges of lime in there, so you might do 15p for a lime. I say that stuff's cheaper. In ginger beer, I factored in the whole bottle. I say 65, 66p for a whole bottle there. Trade prices, you're going to get that quite a lot cheaper. Various other brands of ginger beer, you're going to get that cheaper anyway, but I really do like that. And the 15 drops of Miss Betty's bitters, I've classed as 15p. All in, £2.31. £2.31. That's incredible. Absolutely incredible value for money. I think this might actually get finished before the video's finished. Oh, wow. Wow, wow, wow. I would have that. I've got into my beer recently. I do like a good pint of beer now. Never used to, but I do kind of like. I think I'd still possibly quite happily have 4 or 5 of those if I was out on a night. 4 or 5 of those before I fancied a pint of beer. That's how good that is. So there we go, guys. Amaretto lovers, I'm dying to hear your feedback in the comments below. Which is your favourite? Which one would you dive into? Which one would you order? Which one would you make first? You know, which one of these would you put on a cocktail menu? I'm dying for feedback of this because Amaretto for me is kind of a little bit underrated. It's probably still an underrated product behind your bar. So let me know in the comments below. As I always say, if you make any of my drinks or any kind of drinks that you want to show off, tag me on Instagram at Steve the Barman. At the very least, it will live on my tag feed on my Instagram profile, but I'll try and share as many as I can to my stories. Just had to burp then. That's still not got away from COVID times. As I got a bit older, the gas really hits me there. But anyway, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel. Stats show like plus 80% of you that watch these videos are not subscribed to my channel, so please do hit that subscribe button so you can see more of my videos earlier. That really helps me out. And if you want another spirit that I'm attacking or liqueur, dive into that video right there.